Hi everyone, I'm Sho, I'm the Director of Outdoor Arts UK, and welcome from me also. Now we move on to the presentation or delivery of the sector strategy, and I would like to invite my colleagues who worked on this project, Ralph Kennedy from Without Walls, Sud Basu from Third Version Creative, and Simon Chatterton from 101 Outdoor Arts, and we're going to take it in turns to introduce sections and some of the thinking around the strategy. So first up, we have Simon, who is going to talk through the context and how it all got started.
Thank you, Sho. Yeah, I'm Simon Chatterton from 101 Outdoor Arts, and we're based on the at Greenham Common, formerly Greenham Common American Air Force Base site of two sites in the UK where the Americans had nuclear weapons, but also site of a collective and creative response over more than 2 decades in the former Greenham Women's Peace Camp to a previous manifestation of the global shit show to which Claire referred. And my journey with the strategy came out of our 10-year anniversary and a feeling that, rather than looking back, it would be more important to look forward to the shape of our strategy and our world and the fit between the two things into the future. I was actually born in May 1968, and so some of the slogans on Claire's projections have a real resonance for me, and it felt, in terms of the strategy, that if truly sous les paves was la plage, if under the paving stones of this mess was the beach, then we needed to start digging. And I'm very pleased to say that this strategy that we're launching today is very much a collective effort on the part of not just myself and the people on the stage, but also hopefully the sector, and that many of you will have taken part in the processes that led to today and the launch of the strategy. So I want to thank the partners in this, Ralph from Without Walls, our key main writer, Sud Basu from Third Version Creative, and principally also Sho from OA UK, who has done so much of the heavy lifting in terms of not just the work on the strategy, but the really important consultations and discussions, which, to my mind, are actually really part of the point of doing this, not just to launch a document, but to have those conversations with the sector, but also with people who are really important for us to be having these conversations with. So it's very much a collective articulation. And we started talking together, the four of us, in summer 2024, and then in November 2024, which was also 101's 10th anniversary, we had a sector gathering with 180 colleagues who came together to help us identify key themes and key areas of investigation that we dig into with the document. And that helped us create a national survey. And I want to thank the 95 people who took the time to complete that, because we recognize it was a lot of time and that we asked a lot of questions that demanded a lot of thought and a lot of reflection. So the fact that we got the take-up and the engagement we did was not only affirming, but also, I think, has really underpinned why I hope the strategy reflects the voice of the sector. But that wasn't the end of it, because from that point, Sho in particular conducted a lot of one-to-one interviews with key people in the sector and beyond, and again, many of you will have spoken to him in that process. And that was really useful in digging deeper into some of the things that emerged in the sector discussions and the survey, and getting some reflections from outside. We had interviews for 60 people, and we asked for interviews from 60 people, and 50 of those gave us the time to input into the strategy. We also had an external reference group, and I want to thank the 10 members of that group, and also say that I'm very hopeful that that, along with the other processes, is something that is an ongoing conversation. Now, the strategy is out there in the public. And then finally, in that consultation process, 22 people came to OA UK's roundtable event in November 2025. So this presentation today is about why the strategy matters and what we hope it will enable. So this is the image. This is the image that leads the strategy, and it's titled The Strategy for Joy and Belonging, created for, with, and by the outdoor arts sector. And I'm so delighted that we have had such a powerful reinforcement of that message this morning from Claire, of not just the value that we bring, but just what a massive, massive need for it there is in society. So why now? Why is it important for us, beyond the contribution we can make to the world? Why is it important for us as a sector to be saying the things that the strategy says? Because, as I hope, again, that Claire alluded to, we have the capacity to make and contribute to change, that the work that we do is high impact, but it's low in its barriers, whether those are financial, cultural, other ways of accessing. We know that we reach people. We also know that the work, whether through festivals or participatory projects, is deeply rooted in place. Yet the work always remains arguably under-recognised. It's vulnerable to the short-term nature of its funding, and when there are decisions being made, we're not always in the room as a sector. Our voice isn't always heard. So we argue in the strategy that our value without visibility is not enough, that we need to be a key part of those discussions. We need to be a key part of how culture is imagined into the future. So it feels, and I know from the conversations that I've had over the last few days and the last few months, that our sector's at what can best be most positively described as a turning point. We realise the value of our sector and the contribution it can make, but sometimes that can feel like those possibilities are demands or expectations when we write funding applications, when we put together projects. We know that we are being asked to deliver placemaking. We know increasingly that our projects are seen as being a key factor in well-being and health. We're there to animate regeneration efforts, and we can reach and we continually demonstrate our ability to reach underserved communities. But we're doing this against the precarious backdrop. The local authority support, the small festivals, the events programs, the arts development units that have been key to sustaining this sector, the individuals and organisations in it have shrunk massively and disappeared in many cases. We know that part of this perfect storm is also that our costs have risen. Not only can artists no longer manage to exist cheaply to make the work that they want to make, but the actual costs of creating that work and touring that work have risen. and the infrastructure that we need to support that work to continue to exist and be everything that it can is uneven and fragile. So in our process to find a way forward in what is a confusing, ambiguous, and challenging time, we created the process that I outlined earlier to talk with many of you that are here and many of you outside this room to understand and to articulate as best we can the value of the sector and the needs that we have, but also the opportunities going forward. So I now want to hand over to Sho to present a bit more about the vision and the values of our sector, which came through so unanimously in the research and consultation that we did. And I very much hope that the strategy that we're launching today can build on those strengths. So thank you.
Thank you, Simon. So I have the flowery bit that I can deliver. The vision section of strategy is titled Culture Belongs to Everyone. And it states that public space is where that becomes real. And we heard from colleagues during our research that outdoor arts is where culture becomes democratic. It removes financial, social, and cultural barriers, turns public space into shared civic space, builds joy, trust, and belonging at scale. And there's strong consensus in our sector that joy is not frivolous, it's a civic force. And belonging is not optional, it's fundamental to thriving communities. And outdoor arts is the sector of the creative industries that can unleash the positive power of civic engagement. So what makes outdoor arts distinctive? The strategy argues that the strength of our sector comes from three interlocking foundations, which is culturally democratic and accessible to all, artistic excellence in public space, and a driver of pride in place and regeneration. The debate that pits artistic excellence against accessibility has been going on for a while, and the Hodge Review of Arts Council England, which was published in December, has put it back on the spotlight again. But what we've heard from colleagues during the research is that outdoor arts doesn't agree with this binary framework, and this is our defining strength. Our power comes from holding the artistic and the civic together at the same time, and civic purpose is intricately woven into outdoor arts because our work exists in shared spaces among people going about their daily lives. And the fleet-of-foot nature of our sector means we have increasingly found ourselves presenting our work in communities that are historically underserved by arts and culture. And many of these happen to be places where tensions continue to rise because of the cost of living crisis and other social challenges of recent years. And presenting work in public space comes with a responsibility. Our notion of artistic excellence must be informed through our attention to place, people, and context. The elitist notion of excellent art is not going to fly in our sector because they're imposed, disconnected, and extractive, and inadvertently designed to be exclusive. Our sector consists of curious artists and producers with insatiable appetite to tell new and current stories, and the social awareness they have developed through working in public space enable them to make high-quality artistic work that the full spectrum of our population doesn't just attend, but recognize themselves in. And that's where pride, trust, and belonging start to form. Without artistic ambition, outdoor work risks becoming functional, instrumental, or forgettable. For us, these two elements, artistic excellence and civic relevance, depend on each other. And if the artistic dimension is lost, the work becomes event-led but shallow. If the civic dimension is lost, the work may be impressive but irrelevant. So, we heard so far that the sector delivers on social cohesion, placemaking, culture participation at scale. And we believe and understand from having conversations with various stakeholders that these strongly align with social and political needs and priorities at the moment. The policy is definitely going in this way. So, for example, in launching the City of Culture competition, the Secretary of State, Lisa Nandy, said, "The UK City of Culture competition creates opportunities for everyone, boosting civic pride and community cohesion." And as we saw in Bradford very recently, outdoor arts play a pivotal role in the success of major initiatives like the UK City of Culture. But if we are so well positioned to deliver on policy ambitions, why do we feel so underappreciated? In the recent announcement of the government's £1.5 billion arts funding package, Lisa Nandy explicitly linked arts access with community reach and inclusivity. She said, "The arts belong to everybody, and we are determined to ensure that wherever you are in the country, whatever your background, access to arts and culture belongs to you." But as with the Arts Everywhere funding of last year, the support package and offer doesn't work for our sector, who do the exact kind of work the policymakers are hoping for. And in fact, our exclusion predates our current Secretary of State too. Our sector being ineligible for theatre tax relief is another example. So how can we move on from only getting recognition when there's a major event going on? And the strategy aims to turn our value into leverage to address this issue. We know our impact, and it's time we come together and speak with a united voice. It's time to tell our story. And I'm now handing over to Sid to talk us through some of the thinking behind how we might go about doing this.
Hi everyone. So you've just heard from Sho and Simon about why a strategy is needed, how it came into being, and the value and tensions that sit at the heart of outdoor arts. You've also heard something very clearly, that the sector is being asked to do more, to hold more, and to deliver more, often without the investment, infrastructure, or recognition. What I'm going to do now is shift us slightly from the why and the what to how we hold this. This strategy doesn't resolve those tensions. It doesn't promise quick fixes or easy answers. What it does offer is a shared framework, one that helps us think more clearly about where investment is needed, where alignment matters, and how the sector can make the strongest possible case for what it already contributes and what it could do with more. It's not a manifesto, it's not a funding bid, and it's not a set of instructions. What it is a shared framework shaped by people in this very room and many others from across the sector. It sets direction rather than prescription. It encourages collaboration, not hierarchies, and it's designed to support collective action. Crucially, it's meant to be useful locally in the everyday decisions that you're already making, referenced nationally in conversations many of you are already having with funders, with policymakers, and with partners, and adaptive regionally, because outdoor arts has always responded to place. You don't need to hold all the information that you're hearing with us today. Today is about spending time with it, and the next few days will be also, and about seeing where it resonates for you. At the heart of the strategy are 4 objectives. They're designed to work together. They reflect how the sector actually operates as interconnected, place-responsive, and shaped by multiple forces at once. These objectives are the product of sustained dialogue. They mark areas where there is clear alignment, and others where the strategy deliberately holds complexity rather than forcing a resolution. This builds on what already exists. It responds to what is now necessary given the scale, ambition, and responsibility of the work outdoor arts is being asked to do. Each objective includes a set of implementation pathways, different routes of action, not a ranked list of priorities. They're intended to be flexible, context-specific, and taken up in different ways by different parts of the sector. I'll touch on each of them briefly, but enough to give you a shared frame of where the conversations which might start and which might follow from today. Objective 1, sector development. This first objective is about sector development, not in a generic sense, but about the conditions in which work is made, presented, and sustained. Much of this will feel familiar. Ambition is high, expectations are growing, and conditions around the work often feel increasingly fragile. This objective is about being more intentional about about how we work with place and community, about strengthening the relationships between artists, producers, and events. It recognises outdoor arts as a connective tissue within local cultural ecosystems and asks how that role can be better supported. Many of you will also recognise how deeply rooted outdoor arts can be in communities, how quickly that work can unravel when the platform sits at the edges of cultural strategies. This strategy asks for greater alignment so that contexts in which outdoor arts happens are more resilient and better able to sustain the work they enable. One area that's come through clearly is where work is made. For a sector that holds artistic excellence and civic responsibility together, the infrastructure that supports creation, be that space, time, technical, logistical supports, remains uneven. That unevenness has real implications for ambition, sustainability, and artistic quality. We all understand the realities of capital investment in difficult times. Environmental stewardship and diverse representation run across this objective, not as additional themes, but as part of how quality is understood in this sector. The second objective responds to a shared challenge across the sector. The sector delivers social cohesion, it delivers well-being, economic impact, and cultural participation at scale. But that value is often held in pockets, in project reports, in evaluations, or in ways that don't travel far. This objective is about proving the worth of the sector. It's about building a shared language and shared tools so that the value of outdoor arts can be articulated with greater confidence and consistency. We're operating in an environment where evidence opens doors, and this strategy is clear-eyed about that. It's not a call for more data, it's an invitation to decide together what evidence actually serves our sector and how insight can be gathered in the ways that feel proportionate, useful, and aligned with the values of our work. The third objective is about advocacy, ensuring outdoor arts is present in the spaces where decisions are already being made, across culture, across place, health, regeneration, tourism, and the environment. This is about visibility, representation, and it's about alignment. So outdoor arts is recognised not as the add-on, but as core civic infrastructure. In many of the agendas, it already sits. The final objective is about something that has long been part of our sector's DNA. This room brings a wide range of experience of international working, built at different moments, through different routes, and in very different conditions. Some of that experience comes from periods where international exchange was much more straightforward. Some have been developed more recently through new models, partnerships, and ways of working. Taken together, this forms a shared language, a shared landscape of knowledge, much of it already being exchanged generously, informally, and with care across the sector. This objective is about recognising that richness and thinking about how international connection, collaboration, and exchange can continue to evolve. Outdoor arts has always been shaped by dialogue beyond borders, by learning from others, and by work that travels physically, culturally, and imaginatively. This objective is about remaining outward-facing, curious, and connected, while responding thoughtfully to climate responsibility and the realities of our own context. Rather than 4 priorities, this strategy sets out a system. one that many of you already recognise in practice. Strengthening the conditions around the work supports greater ambition. That ambition generates insight and impact. When that impact is articulated clearly, the sector gains confidence, credibility, and influence. International exchange keeps that system open, challenging, and alive. This isn't about starting again. It's about aligning, amplifying, and sustaining what the sector already does well. Ultimately, the strategy points towards shared responsibility, purpose, and sector-owned governance. It's about shifting conditions, including where investment, infrastructure, and alignment are most needed. And with that, I'll hand over to Ralph Kennedy, who can talk us through a delivery framework and how this moves forward.
Thank you, Sid. Hello, everybody. It's great to be here. Thank you, Claire, for an inspirational opening address. I'm going to finish the presentation with some reflections on what the strategy is and what it isn't, and steps for how we can all take it forward together from here into action. As the slide above me says, there are a few things that the strategy isn't. It's not a manifesto. It's not a funding bid. It's not designed merely as a statement of things that we believe in or things that we don't believe in. And it's not here solely to support income generation, although that would be nice. Rather, I think it's best understood as a framework of shared priorities. It sets directions, not quick remedies that are likely to fail. It hopes for collaboration, not hierarchies. It's designed to be used locally and referenced nationally. And it is mine, shows Sud's and Simon's shared hope that it will enable collective action and change. Something all four of us want to stress is that this piece of work has never been about the future or value of Without Walls, 101, Outdoor Arts UK, or Third Vision Creative, or indeed Arts Council England. In the time and with the resources that were available to us, we have taken as much care and consideration as possible to reach out to the widest cross-section of our wonderful sector, to listen to what you feel the sector's priorities need to be. As Show and Sud have just shown, the vision of the strategy and the objectives for implementing it are things that transcend or go beyond any one organisation, any art form, any particular community of practice, or indeed any specific generation of practitioners in outdoor arts. And it is great to see so many different generations of outdoor arts practitioners here today. Ultimately, the strategy is about all of us, the entire sector working together to align what we do, collect the best data on what we do, and make the strongest possible case for our value. If we're able to do this over the next 10 years, I have no doubt, we have no doubt, that we'll be creating the best conditions for all of your individual ambitions and potential to be realised. An outcome that will ultimately benefit our audiences, our communities, and help nurture the next generation of artists, producers, and collaborators as they join us in creating outdoor work over the coming 10 years. Today is the first time the strategy has been shared publicly, and we wanted to do this with the people to whom it matters the most. The sector who have created the strategy and to whom it belongs. It is your strategy. We want to say a huge thanks to all of you who have contributed your time, expertise, and passion through the different phases of the consultation. As mentioned, the 180 of you who came to the symposium at 101 in November 2024. It feels like a long time ago. The 95 of you who completed the online survey, and it was an in-depth and long survey, and thank you for doing that. And the 48 of you who had one-to-ones with Show and Sud over the last 12 months. We'd also like to thank Arts Council England for their support of this work. And just for me, I would like to say a thank you to Show. Over the last 18 months, your vision, your commitment, and your sheer hard work have been an inspiration to me and to the rest of the people on the stage here, and thank you for that. So we're committed now to building on the momentum of today's announcement. The next big step will be a public launch of the strategy to national and local government, to funders and to other stakeholders sometime in the spring or the summer. Please do look out for information about this, which will be made available, of course, on our websites in due course. Alongside this, and I think more importantly, or as importantly, a delivery plan is now being developed using two guiding principles. Open participation, that everyone can be involved in this, delivering this, and transparent review. So we will continually share what we're doing, what's happening, what action is taking place. Outdoor Arts UK will act as the catalyst and the anchor for this delivery plan, which will seek to translate the shared ambitions of the strategy into clear, coordinated action with responsibilities and timelines. So that is it for the strategy presentation. As way of conclusion, we're going to show a video, if I can get it to play. And this is a video from Bradford City of Culture 2025. It's the closing ceremony, and it's where we see a diverse range of communities stand united in public space, taking part in and observing a performance of joy and belonging. So, I might need someone's help to do this.
Thank you, colleagues, for the presentation. Glad that that's over. Anyway, as a way of starting this conversation, we have invited some panelists to have a discussion around what areas outdoor arts as a sector can take leadership on in terms of moving forward with making impact on communities and also to make a case for policy. So I have the pleasure of inviting colleagues on the stage, which will be chaired by Amanda Parker. So if we could do a smooth transition of speakers, that would be great. Thank you.
Hello and welcome everybody to our reflection. Ooh, the microphone. Does that sound okay to you? Because I feel like I'm echoing. Thumbs up if I sound normal. Okay, thank you. Welcome to our discussion, which will be about reflection on the strategy. We really want to hear your thoughts, though. I'm hoping that a Slido code will appear on my screen very soon so that we can get your input as well. If that doesn't happen, I'll just ask for the good old-fashioned hands up at the end for anyone who wants to ask questions. But for us to kick off, you've all seen the programme, but if I can do a very brief introduction to who's on the stage with me. I'm Amanda Parker. I write for The Stage, and I'm also a consultant across the cultural industries. On my left, far left, is Adriana Marquez, who's the Assistant Director of Cultural Programming for the Peabody Trust, one of the UK's largest social housing organisations. Next to her is Joe McIntosh, the Artistic Director of Out There Festival in Yarmouth. How long have you been doing that? Great Yarmouth. Great Yarmouth. How long?
27 years.
27 years, a few years. Yeah. Beside me on my right is Janine Bethina, who is the outgoing Director of Culture at Brighton and Hove and the incoming Director of Culture at the Royal Borough of Greenwich. And beside her is Parmjit Sagu, who is the creative lead and executive producer of Inspirate Festival in Leicester. So please, a welcoming hand to all of the panellists. Thank you. We're going to kick off first with just a short presentation from each of the speakers to set the tone, and then we'll dive into the meat of it, asking for Adriana to start with that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Let me... Slides working? There we are. Well, good morning, and thanks for having me here. So I'm coming and being on the stage here from the point of a commissioner and somebody who, you know, has really built a case around outdoor arts and especially the role that it plays in shaping the narrative of a place and in local pride. So I'm really here, I think, to show some examples to you this morning of what I've been doing over the last 8 years. And I hope that it's kind of like useful to play back to you how a very non-art sector is seeing the value of all of the collective work that you've been doing. So I started with, you know, this kind of title or subtitle, you know, the stories we tell, and I think that that has been really, really important. So as Amanda said, I work for Peabody. We're a really large housing association. We work throughout London and the North County, so we actually have homes and neighbourhoods here in Cambridge. And I've been working specifically in Thamesmead for the last 8 years, which is where this picture is. You know, it's a large town, 47,000 people, 2 local authorities, and it's been very much within a context of driving cultural regeneration that I've been embedding large-scale commissions, and I've been able to do that every year for the last 8 years. And for me, it's been very much about building the case around raising local pride, and especially around raising profile. So this is a large hot air balloon by the artists Musson and Retelik that we commissioned just after COVID that showcases over 200 local stories on there. And so people might say, well, why is it the role of a local housing association to be commissioning a hot air balloon? And so I think that's where I play back to what our founder, George Peabody, said. It's about creating a sense of purpose and belonging. And there's a lot of talk in the strategy, which I really welcome, around cultural democracy. And I don't know about where you are, but in my world, even in a housing association, the term co-design just gets used a lot. It gets talked about our residents' services, about our surveys, about how we kind of like, you know, manage the provision of bin stores. But what I've tried to do with that through the cultural lens is it's really about this shifting of power, and I think that's where I felt really inspired by some of the things that Claire was saying. So this procession by Emergency Exit Arts that was done as part of Thamesmead's 50th anniversary was explicitly what local people were asking for, and they were asking for a creative output of what their local identity was about. So this was really around showcasing the cultural gems of Thamesmead. Sorry, the changeover is a little slow on the slides. And then to thinking about how, you know, this outdoor work can really change forgotten spaces, and I really loved some of those examples in the strategy. It's about bringing places back to life and imbuing them with a sense of joy and love. This was a piece by Dante O'Dai in our ongoing partnership with Greenwich and Docklands International Festival, and it was really about bringing this dying town centre, you know, back to life and really just filling it with that collective sense of a very specific local heritage. And whenever working anywhere, I always say that it's so important to start with what's there. I think, you know, any of us, wherever we work, there will always be like an absolute incredible local history that is there to be celebrated and to be mined. So with this staging of A Beautiful Thing was this incredible story that had been both written and filmed in Thamesmead in the 90s. And again, with Greenwich and Docklands International Festival, we brought that back to life and staged it on these buildings that were about to be demolished. Now, I could talk a lot about how beautiful A Beautiful Thing was and how it was presented and choreographed with, you know, local people. But the key thing about this is that these buildings were about to be demolished, and they're brutalist buildings, and this was a very contentious subject, you know, and rightly so, continues to be. But I was very public in using this as a moment to say goodbye to those buildings and using an outdoor production as a way of marking a change in the built environment. And I think even when it isn't about buildings and when it isn't about a very specific content, it's about the people that are there and it's about the process. So GDIF brought Les Voyages to Thamesmead by XY. They did a residency, and this, I use this image all the time to just really embody what it is to give power back to local people, as a local resident has, you know, literally been, very carefully put on top of this, you know, beautiful human pyramid. And I think one of the things that I'm always advocating for is the long-term view in having this long-term relationship with Greenwich and Docklands Festival. We've been able to really understand each other, and they understand how important these local relationships and partnerships are to us and what our priorities are. And just to finish on our last project, even when you think that the content may be just so far removed from where you are, I just have always found that in our context, it's been so important to make it fit. It's got to be relevant to local people. So this was a project by American artist Duke Riley. It's those lines in the sky are actually 1,500 pigeons with LED lights attached to their legs. They only like to fly near water, apparently. So in finding a location in Thamesmead, we then found this perfect kind of link between the heritage of the carrier pigeons in the First World War, the site of Thamesmead as Royal, you know, Munitions Factory. We were then able to bring in 1418 now. It was first brought to us by lift. It's sometimes when you get to the real heart of these hidden stories that then other partnerships start to coalesce. So I think what I really wanted to end with is that, you know, the location and the people matters, and that I am out there, you know, lobbying. We've just, to a short plug, you know, I've just produced a report of the 8 years of work that I've been doing in Thamesmead called Hometown Pride, and the outdoor arts is absolutely central to this evidence that I'm making. So I'm now trying to talk to other housing associations. My role has been made across Peabody, so I now have, you know, a whole lot of opportunity to look at how else we can continue to bring this sense of what Sho said, you know, belonging is not optional, it's fundamental to thriving communities, and ultimately as a housing association, that's what we're trying to build. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey. Oh, right. I haven't. I've got one slide, I think. How do I get it?
Joe's just saying he's got one slide.
How do we get to it?
One slide. It's no problem.
Much easier than mine.
Or just ignore the slide and just talk. It's fine.
Oh, it's a good slide. Can someone help me find it?
Oh, dog, it looks like you need... All right, shall we...
There it is, there it is.
Okay.
Slido.
Oh, stop right there, please.
There it is. There we go. That's my one slide.
That was our opportunity to get people on Slido.
Yeah,
We'll come back to that.
Yeah. I thought this was a good slide. I've entitled my little 5 minutes "Keeping the Show on the Road," because that's a sort of a topic very dear to my heart, and I think making the case for outdoor arts in a room like this is totally preaching to the converted, but I think keeping the show on the road is an agenda that is all very much at the forefront of our minds, I think, isn't it? As many of you will know, and many of you will have been, Outdoor Arts Outdoor Festival is now fairly well-established, well-supported NPO focused on outdoor arts and circus in Great Yarmouth, which is a serious regeneration, deprivation area, formerly glorious seaside town in the east of this region, and we have a very big festival, the Out There Festival, one of the biggest in the UK. We have a large creation centre complex, the Drill House. We have bought a house for artists. We've recently opened another venue, multi-purpose venue. We've set up a CPP, Freshly Grated, in Great Yarmouth, and we do a big year-round programme. We have a circus school and a lot of outreach. And in a good year, which is the most important thing, we actually engage around 100,000 people with real life in the real world. And that all sounds great. It was very hard won. And in terms of how we kind of got to there, and to use Claire's phraseology, when I started there 27 years ago, the shit show was extremely apparent. It was a place of great dysfunctionality, huge social deprivation, and a classic case of a seaside town which had been once glorious and a major centre for culture with an incredible array of once thriving venues, either abandoned, closed down, privatised, sold off. No plan for the arts, no investment, no money, no interest, and I certainly had some sort of head in the hands years, gravitated towards working in public space as the best way to engage in a place like that, and built up where we are over the years. And I like this slide because it's looking back to 2012, and at that stage we'd just done, this was the 5th festival we'd done, and it was a good size by then, but at that point we still had no regular Arts Council money, very, very modest local council support, and we were building up what we had done. We'd just bought the Drill House, which we'd bought with reserves that we'd just squirreled away surreptitiously over a few years. No strategy, no plan, no authority, no partnerships. We'd just done it. And a lot of it we had done just through sort of sheer bloody-minded determination. And we did a lot of nefarious but entirely legal, creative financing and funding, especially through European work at that point. And at that point in 2012, I actually had 6 concurrent separate EU projects, which is an incredible number, and I was using that to lure money out of the Arts Council. I was cash flowing some EU projects with other EU projects, and it was this incredibly delicate house of financial cards that no one could really quite understand apart from me. And I went through several bookkeepers who were having nervous breakdowns when I tried to explain it to them. And we never lied, and we never broke the law, but we did everything else. Literally, we did everything else. And it's wonderful to have the strategy. Yes, we absolutely need to make the case, but in those days, our feeling was that we have to do it. We have to do it. We have to do it here and now, and we have to show. And even though I was completely panicking about how on earth do I keep the show on the road, because the show had got quite big by then. And also at this point in 2012, we could also see the national and international cracks that were coming. I'd worked in a place that felt pretty crappy and challenging to start with, but the rest of the world was looking all right, and then over the years it's gone in reverse. So in 2012, we could see the impacts of essentially the financial crisis in 2008 coming through. I could see the EU money, the investment in culture already coming to an end. This is just a couple of months before David Cameron announced what was then going to be the referendum vote on Brexit, and you could already see austerity coming into local authorities, and especially some of the poorer ones. All credit, especially to the Arts Council, who haven't really been mentioned that much, who really good factor in these years, has been a huge shift in their interest in least engaged places, more impoverished places, and that wasn't the case when we started. And it's been that's been a huge shift, and really important in us establishing ourselves. But we're extremely worried about how we keep the collective show on the road and how we support you. I was going to say a few things in terms of practical things that I think we could actually do.
Let's save that until we
Should we do that?
Let's save that for the discussion.
Okay, we'll go on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I take the clicker and hand it to you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. It's like the talking stick in a nursery school, isn't it?
Hi, everyone. I've written loads of notes, but of course everybody's already said everything that I was going to say. So I'm coming at this very much from working in local government, thinking about policy and strategy, and really understanding how I can help to make the case for funding and investment, but also to really develop a really great understanding that the role of artists can play in more localism agendas. And it's really interesting because I think internationally this is a conversation that's happening. Localism is important everywhere in the world, and it's so great to read this introduction to the Melbourne City Creative Strategy, which was really a call to arms to creatives to put down their kind of creative, or put aside their creative tools and bring their kind of pioneering energy to help solve some of the big problems that we're facing in our places, and really understanding that creatives can do that and can really be a force to be reckoned with, and to find some amazing artistic solutions to that. I was also reflecting a little bit on New Landscapes, which was the outdoor art strategy that was produced by the Arts Council that I was involved in back in 2008. And I'm not going to read this slide, but I can share it with all of you. But I think really what we can see is there has been more investment. It may be coming from different places. There have been a whole series of major national events that you can see at the bottom of that screen, from Cities of Culture to Commonwealth Games, to Boroughs of Culture, to big international programs like Unboxed, to all the new place partnerships that have been announced by Arts Council in partnership with the LGA. So it feels like a huge amount has happened. And where we are now, I suppose, is really that moment where we're moving to devolution. We're thinking more about pride in place and what that really means, not just bringing joy, not just connecting people, but where do we take it next? What's the next layer of that work? And also this real need for long-termism, which I think we all feel very acutely, that, you know, in terms of really enabling the voice of the outdoor sector, they need to have that real strong foundation. I wanted to just talk briefly about localism themes. You'll all be very aware of them, and I've just listed some of the ones that I suppose are relevant to local authorities now. And if you pick up any plan, like corporate plan from any local authority around the country, these are the kinds of policies and themes and priorities that government are pushing. And so I suppose what I want to say is, I know that we talk a lot about, you know, not wanting art to be instrumentalist, and that we must push for art's sake. But I think we are in a moment when it is a really difficult, challenging time, and we've heard about it. We've heard about the shit show that's going on around the world, but at home on our doorstep as well. And as artists, you all work in the public sector, and it's a sector that has ever-reducing funds. And so it's an even more important time for us to really engage and come together to find the solutions together, and to use the limited funding that is there to really make that change happen that we all want to see. And we talk a little bit, I suppose, about designing programs that are about civic or economic activation. So moving from spectator to citizen, thinking about agnostic spaces, so not just creating nice events, but as we've heard through all of our speakers, really thinking about the priorities of those places and of the people in those places and how we're engaging with that. And in terms of economic activation, kind of, I suppose, thinking beyond festival footfall, you know, moving the conversation from one-off spending to long-term economic resilience, how festivals can create temporary clusters, thinking about the nighttime economy and the role that artists play in curating the evening hours. It's not just about bars and restaurants, it's about using light and sound and performance to make our places feel safe and attractive and draw new and diverse audiences to feel comfortable and welcome in those spaces. and then authenticity as a brand. So activation is really about how artists can extract that local DNA to create that and play into that real localism identity and that regional identity, again, that brings in that inward investment and talent. And we talked a little bit about data, and again, I'm not going to read through this slide, but just to say that data is vital, but when we're collecting data, we need to think about why we're collecting it. What we need to be doing is measuring change. We need to understand what the change is in our local places and where we want to get to, and then use the data to do that storytelling. So through all of the work that you're doing, through all of the funding programs and projects that you're given, actually really thinking carefully about how that project and how that funding can make change happen for local people and places. And just a few final slides. This was really about devolution, so I touched on it earlier. So 41% of England is now devolved, and it's increasing. So in the next 5 to 10 years, the whole country will be devolved, where local decision-making will be made, two-tier government. And I would suggest that this is a time for us to be really engaging with this devolution agenda. I think this could be the next big opportunity for the sector. If you think back to all of those major programs we've had, it could be a time to build new alliances and to position ourselves locally and regionally, to think about multi-year residencies, to think about associate artist schemes, to think about more creation centres, networks of hubs, and to really think about how we position our unique skills and strengths. Working in Sussex and Brighton, which is going to be devolved in 2008, we were starting to think about how can we collect the data and the evidence and turn it into really great storytelling. So we're really positioning the arts sector at the centre of devolution. Who do we need to influence? How can we keep devolved authorities, how can we help devolved authorities demonstrate the power of art? And how can the power of art really tell the stories of the work of those devolved authorities? And who's leading these conversations, and how do we get into those conversations? And how do we achieve our vision, our plans, and our ambitions, not just locally and regionally, but nationally as well? So I suppose my final thoughts would be that this is a vital moment for the new strategy coming through. It's going to enable new conversations across the sector and help us to think about how we make that case for investment, but also embed us in that localism agenda really, really strongly and powerfully. I'm trying to move my slide forward and it's not coming. And so just finally I would say, so the outdoor arts sector is entering a moment where it can become one of the most powerful delivery mechanisms of the localism agenda, and I really believe that, but only if it makes some deliberate and strategic choices. And this is your moment with a new strategy to really activate and think about what those choices are and where we want the sector to be and how to use that localism agenda to help us. Over the next decade, the sector will need to balance creativity with policy fluency, with community power right at the centre of that, financial resilience, and that hyper-local relevance that will bring that kind of national power and embed us in the future of the arts in our country. Thank you.
Thank you. I can see lots of people scribbling notes, so we'll be sure to make the slides available. No need to take your own notes, we'll make them available, Parmjit. Thank you.
I have, can you hear me? Okay. Feels very echoey from up here, so you question yourself. I have no slides, but I felt I had to take that as the ritual to continue the talking stick ritual, but I'll give it back to you. Okay, so I'm Parmjit. I'm the executive producer and artistic lead for Inspirate. We're an organisation that specialises in contemporary South Asian culture and artistry. So as I've said, I have no slides. You just have my words and your imagination. But there have been a lot of words. So actually what I'm going to start with is something that connects us all back to our body and our breath. So I'd like to invite you to place your feet firmly on the floor. Rest one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly. And just activate your spine so that you're supporting yourself here as you sit. And really connect to the soles of your feet, to the ground and the earth underneath. Breathe in through your nose, slowly and deeply, so you feel the belly rise as you breathe in. As you exhale, as you breathe out, let that air come out from out of the mouth, so you're sighing out a long sigh. Once again, breathe in through the nose, feel the belly rise, and then sigh out slowly through your mouth. And one more time, inhaling through the nose and sighing out. Feel that connection between the soles of your feet and the floor once again. Press your feet into the floor. Feel that pressure there. And then relax your feet. And open your eyes if you have them closed. So this is a breathing practice I do as part of our warm-up process when we tour our show, Ancient Giants, across the UK. It's something that we do just before we head out to do our walkabouts and performances and be in public spaces, knowing that it helps to ground and anchor us. And this breathing practice is amongst many strategies and processes we put in place to deal with the pressures of presenting artistic work within the social tensions of today, especially as a team that's predominantly South Asian. And there is no getting away from the fact that the world, as we've heard today, is very fractured, turbulent right now. Racism, discrimination, and hate crime is on the rise and increasingly present within our everyday lives, within our communities, and on our streets. So touring a show, making festivals happen, we also have an annual festival, within this current climate is challenging to say the least. Hostile incidents have happened to us, and on a number of occasions. I won't go into them all now, but the reality of being a diverse company, touring and taking work to public spaces within these times is that we have to be hyper-vigilant about our safety. And one of the first conversations I will have with festival organisers is what are the security and safeguarding procedures that have been put in place to protect us. And the reality is that these conversations are varied in terms of awareness and the processes that are actually in place. Some festivals are great, and others there is more to develop. Some places where I've had to say or report an incident, sometimes that has been minimised, and in other places I have been listened to with care. More often than not, these conversations are instigated by us as a team, as an organisation. And yet, the Inspirate team and all the artists and wonderful creatives we work with haven't lost our joy, we haven't lost our purpose or our passion for doing this work. We do it because we want as many people to engage with our work, and we do it because we want to be a catalyst for dialogue and connection across communities. I'm just going to skip to a story from 2024, a memory. And in 2024, our flagship festival, an Indian Summer, which happens nationally, took place while the far-right riots and violence were actively happening across the UK. And it was a very, very scary and anxious time for us, bearing in mind that most of the artists that we feature in our festival and audiences that come to our festival are South Asian. The work we had to do across security, safeguarding, well-being, and communications was immense. But we were determined that the festival would happen and would be a safe space for all. These words, the following words I'm sharing with you, were part of the opening speech for the festival that year. And this was how our artists, partners, and audiences were welcomed to the space that we had created. Festivals like an Indian summer would not happen without the crossing of borders, without journeys being made, and the migration of people across the world. We, as a festival team, believe that our society thrives on collaboration, discovery, curiosity, compassion, and respect for one another's identity and culture, infused with the courage and willingness to explore difficult questions and untold histories together, collectively widening the lens that we perceive this world through. Our festival artists this year have been amazing during this very, very difficult build-up, working with us to make decisions and adaptations, proceeding with such courage and such bravery. It takes a lot to bring your artistry and energy into public spaces where there's currently such hatred and violence targeted towards us. Together, we bring this festival to life with fire in our belly, with pride in who we are, and in solidarity with one another. Those were the words I shared back in 2024 at our festival launch and closing event too. But our festival and all the work we do continues with that very energy. It continues to be an empowering and shared space, a vital act of resistance, visibility, and joy. And we determinedly bring people together within a national and global context that seeks to divide and silence us. And I'm going to just end with a couple of questions that are connected. How can we keep that very energy that I've described and the potential of the outdoor arts within that, but with a more consistent approach to safeguarding and protecting artists and festival delivery teams? How can this happen without the labour and work of the sitting with the very people for whom this is everyday reality and everyday lived experience? The responsibility has to shift from us having to breathe and ground ourselves in our green rooms, in isolation, in our bubbles. We will continue to breathe and ground ourselves, but this needs to sit within a much bigger and collective act of care across the sector.
Thank you, Pandit, and thank you all speakers. Can I ask all, as if by magic, I was about to say, can I ask the tech team to bring up the Slido code? And there it appeared. So if everyone who wants to can grab their phones, and this is for the Slido novices in the room. There's no shame in being a Slido novice. If you type slido.com into your favorite browser, you'll be asked to put in a code. Put in that code, number 4137523. That's going to be the space where you can have a conversation, reflect on what you hear from the panel right now, and also post questions. Given the time, I can't guarantee that I'll get to many. I will do my bestest. But if you do want to put a question there, can you start it with big capitals saying question? Because what's going to happen is we'll see a whole stream of comments, and I need to be able to see a question jump out from the skies like that. So, has everyone who wants to been able to connect? The Wi-Fi is easy to connect in this building. I'm going to assume that's a yes, unless anyone's having problems, wave your phone furiously and someone can come and help you. No? Good, all good. Okay, to the panel, first question. It strikes me, woo, questions popping in already. I'm not even going to look at them yet because I have my own questions. It strikes me that much of outdoor arts is often transient and ephemeral, and I want to kind of reflect in light of the strategy and the strategy's real ambitions for gathering data and increasing advocacy. Is that transience, that ephemeral quality, a help or a hindrance? Or is it something I shouldn't even pay attention to? I'm going to start with you, Janine, because you kindly laughed at my lame joke.
So I think, so the question is really about data and whether and how we use it.
And is the nature of the art itself one of the things that stops people seeing it? And if it is, what might you do differently? Questions within a question.
So I would say there's a huge amount of data in our world. I mean, there is data everywhere. And from my perspective, working in local government, the funding that we get is to make change happen in our local places, whatever that might look like, to improve people's quality of life, to give them better life chances, to connect people, to bring joy, so many different things. But all the time, we're measuring our success. And so I suppose with artists, it's thinking about how we work more closely with artists to think about the delivery of that work.
Because policymakers can have very short attention spans and short memories. So yes, I understand the working with. Is there something that artists should do differently in terms of their engagement with policymakers, given that they won't remember what they did unless there's a massive permanent structure in the middle of the town square? I'm paraphrasing, but you know what I mean.
I think there's something, I mean, I mentioned it briefly, but there's something about the vocabulary we use, and that's where we can work together. But ultimately, I suppose, it's a combined effort, and you need people who are pro-culture, pro-arts in those local government, those local authority environments, who can work with the sector to bring to life the work that's happening. The other thing I would say is that when I was in Coventry, we actually had resident creatives in the local authority in different departments who were in paid positions to come in and help us on particular areas, so around homelessness specifically, also around public realm and regeneration. And they were able to work with the people in those departments to really think about the role of art in delivering
So in terms of wider advocacy, that might be a suggestion to the room to think about how you find someone that's resident or works closely with council to keep it uppermost. I'm going to ask the same question to you, Pranjit, particularly in light of what you've just spoken to, a very, very febrile atmosphere of hate and the transient quality of all of our memories. You know, for some of us, that summer and the summer before became the summer of racism, and for others it's gone and dusted. So again, the transient nature of the art, how do you work with that effectively? How do you make sure that's embedded in a community?
I think a lot of energy goes into that final moment, or that final moment of sharing, the final moment of a festival weekend happening, and everybody, the whole drive is towards that. And I just wonder whether we need to do more about making the process much more transparent and available to people. So all the work that goes on behind the scenes, one of the projects that we did last year, Bridging Beats, which was a youth music project which worked really, really carefully with young people. The final sharing was a sound installation that they created, which was featured as part of our festival. But actually what we did with our evaluation was actually, with getting the young people involved, was to track their journey through the project really carefully. Every session involved some sort of creative evaluation or a chance for them to put forward their thoughts about what they were gaining from the project. And actually, our evaluation film we made was really focused on that. And the installation was a little bit of sparkle at the end. And that's what we share, and that's what we put out, and what was liked by the funders and value style. So it's the way of making the story of how projects or festivals come to be and what that does for people along the way. I think there's something in there that we need to bring out more.
Thank you. And Jo, you've taken a very different approach, which you've referenced, and I'd like to unpack a little bit more. And I'm just going to reference the Slido, because as you can all see, it's gone crazy. And that question will definitely be asked. Okay, so holding that there. You've talked about squirreling away cash. It's what I heard, anyway. And actually building a venue. So again, thinking about the nature of the form, what tips, advice, suggestions might you share with the community here in terms of embedding a structural approach a buildings-based structural approach to outdoor arts making.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, one of the points I was going to make was in regard to capital investment, and sort of following on from some comments of some of the previous panelists. I think it's highly desirable to make some changes to national policy about capital investment in culture, which tends to be, in terms of its rules, investment into existing cultural spaces. And I think a necessity, not just for the outdoor arts sector, but for the whole of the arts sector, is to be far more creative and flexible about approaches to using capital investment into assets that essentially either drive income generation or save money.
So say more, what kind of thing might that be? Or
Classic things, they're all the things that the local authorities know are extremely valuable to them. So car parks, we would love a car park for culture. You know, they'd sit there, we can sometimes put shows on them and they make loads and loads of money. I'm paying for the multi-story at the end of the day, it's going to be like £60 or something. I like a bit of that action. Housing for artists. I mean, it's a huge challenge for everyone, somewhere affordable to live. We've bought one house in Yarmouth with a loan. You know, you can buy a 3-bedroom house not far from the beach for about £120,000 there. We'd like 10 and to build a collective, you know, based on low rent and some reciprocal arrangements around working in the community to make some work sustainable.
And is this about artists just taking the risk, the personal risk? I mean, personally, that terrifies me.
No,
the idea
I think we should be doing it. These should be public assets, right, you know, owned by charities running them, and we should be setting up schemes based on very affordable, you know, long-term housing, not just housing for short-term residencies, but places to live and build creative communities, and couple that with, you know, work generation and building collectives. Warehousing, that's another thing, you know. You can make a lot of money from warehousing, and you can save a lot of money. Just land where you can do things. I think these are some of the assets that we desperately need, and it would be fantastic to generate more of a conversation about how capital assets can be built for the outdoor arts sector to really help us and underpin our work going forward.
I don't know about you, but I'm feeling the love in the room, so that's working for lots of people, lots of nods. I'm going to go to you, Adriana, with that leading question on the Slido poll, partly because my first job was in Thamesmead. Nobody needs to know this, but it is relevant because way back in the 1900s, it was one of the most hostile areas for black people to even step into. As a radio journalist, you can imagine, terrified. And now it's a very different place. So that question feels very pertinent to me. For those, if the writing's too small, I'm not sure if it is. It's okay to read, but it says, how have you negotiated politics in public space? Thinking about that intersection with social housing and local authorities and culture, feels like you're at quite the apex of a Venn diagram. You can't have an apex of a Venn diagram, I know that. Particularly in reference to local authorities being nervous around political narratives and referencing the shit show. So how do you navigate that, and what tips might you share?
Carefully, nervously, is how you navigate it. I think this goes back to what I was saying about that kind of like the shifting of power, and to really be listening locally and starting with what's there. And I've been looking a lot at the other comments around like how do you then square that circle around having work that is hyper-local and locally relevant, and the touring. And I guess that's what, you know, we've tried to do in Thamesmead, and now, you know, the conversations I'm trying to have in other areas is that, so in terms of the local politics, if you start with what's there, and if you are listening, and listening carefully and with intent to what the local people want, and then you try and be, I feel like a lot of the time my role is to be that bridge.
But what if what people want is reform, to pick one of many options?
So, well, facing that right now in, you know, out in Bexley, not to name, well, I don't know yet, but and in some of the other boroughs that we're working. It's about making sure that you have a diverse range of voices there. And so so one of the projects that I've led on is the kind of like the growth of the Thamesmead Festival, and that has been absolutely about having it been led by 14 local people. We don't ask about their, you know, political persuasions, but it is about that like inclusion and having that diversity of voice. and then just trying to navigate that. I don't have like a golden answer other than it needs to be done carefully and with sensitivity. But I feel that I leave a lot of that resolution to the creative minds, and it's not me to come in and resolve that. What I do is create the space in which those conversations can be had. I guess to Shanine's point about you need cultural people like us in those positions. So the fact that my role even exists within a housing association, I think is like that's where the gold is. And, you know, and I'm like, feel forever privileged and grateful that a housing association has the foresight to do that. You know, the same with those local authorities that still have held on to, you know, their cultural teams to be able to, you know, it's always a point of negotiation and of care and of, you know, of creating a safe space.
So it feels like part of the answer to that question in terms of advocacy, coming to you second, Janine, is advocating for a voice in the local authority on behalf of culture, whether it is a cultural role or whether it's someone who has responsibility for that. So I want to put that question to you because you are, of all panellists, the best place to talk about navigating politics in a public space. How might artists do it? How do you manage it? What learnings are there for this community?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, it's public space, it's for the public. And so, you know, you want it to be space that can be owned by the public. I think Adriana's right, you have to do it carefully. You have to, you know, I suppose as local authority officers, we're being talked to by different groups from the community all the time about, how they're feeling, what's happening for them, you know, where tensions might be. And so it's always about how you manage that really carefully. I think in terms of representation in local authorities, someone asked about the new landscapes and what's happened since 2008. And one of the things I think we can definitely say is there are more people working in the Arts Council or in local authorities or in local government now from this sector. They didn't work in those spaces before, so I think that is definitely an outcome. And they're the people who need to come together with the sector to really kind of help kind of make that case. I think in terms of artists, for me, it's just about how we work with them. And obviously I'm in Greenwich now, we've got, you know, brilliant companies there like Greenwich and Docklands Festival and Emergency Exit Arts who work in public spaces all the time and who have become incredibly knowledgeable and have a really great understanding of the politics of those spaces. And for us, we're learning, I think, as local authorities from artists as well.
And I think in Greenwich in particular, the local authorities have such a very good understanding of the economic value to their region that comes from that creative endeavour.
Yeah, I mean, we have an amazing young leader, Anthony, who absolutely sees the value of arts and culture. I couldn't maybe have said that when I was in Brighton. So, you know, every different place, they have different priorities. Politicians have different priorities. You couldn't say that of every London borough. You couldn't say that of every city. So having those incredible kind of leaders who really get the value of arts and culture is extraordinary. And we need to harness them and get them kind of working on our behalf and advocating.
And the advocacy of creatives is key
to
that.
Absolutely, and the creatives have to be in that conversation. I mean, we talked about devolution. You know, in Sussex and Brighton, no one is going to pick up the flag for outdoor arts or the arts even and wave it. It has to be done by the sector with people like me helping to convene and facilitate. It has to come from those people locally and regionally who can create a vision, who can look at it as an opportunity and who can think, you know, creatively about what it could look like and how, you know, a creative workforce can support the ambitions of that new devolved authority.
On the note of devolution, I want to come to you, Parmjit, because touring, as the second question really identifies, it feels like a tension, if not a friction, to think about devolved communities and then think about what that means for touring. And again, I really know your work and your organisation's work it's one kind of touring, but in answering this question, I'd love you to think about what that looks like for commercial offers or for West End shows or whatever it might be, different scale of touring. So the question talks about, you know, we understand the potential benefits of place-based making and getting more funding, as you've spoken to, in terms of local funding, but isn't there a tension around what that means for touring and how do we square that circle?
That's a very complex question, yeah, because place-based making and creating demands really deep relationships with communities and the people that you're working with, and the time scale that takes to build authentic relationships and collaborations. And touring asks you to make it a speed and then just get the show on the road, get it out there and go to as many people as possible. So there's a real sort of conflict there. I think there's actually room for both. There's actually room for both, for that sort of speedier making and touring, getting work out there, and making sure that the work that is touring is diverse, represents many, many different voices, and is able to be shown in as many different places as possible. I think there's value in that.
I'd like to, if I may, drill down into that a little bit more, because I can envisage a scenario where a touring company comes to an area, a region, and has had the conversation with local artists and said, okay, we need to make sure that our work reflects this community. And actually, it doesn't. You know, there are many scenarios we can all think of where you can have the dialogue. Again, going back to the reform argument, how would your work fit with a community that is local, that you want to go to, just happens to be racist? Sorry, reform. I just, like, it's just an example today.
Just going back, I think it's going from the experience of touring Ancient Giants, which is, it's a South Asian show. The aesthetics, the story that it's been inspired by is South Asian. But that it hasn't, but the process of making that show was carefully done so that the narrative and the themes feel universal to all. And that has worked. It's worked for us. So wherever we go to, and we have been to areas where there's not a lot of South Asian communities there. Reform is the council, and it's been challenging. It's been really challenging. And we've had, you know, some hostile incidents, but in the flip side, we've also had people come to us saying, I want to know more about this show. I want to know more about the characters, the story. I'm really interested because it connected with me, because the themes were universal. And then that opened up a whole conversation with those audiences that may not normally have talked to us, you know, or shown interest in us. So, and that connection really matters, and lots of those connections have been happening. So I think what arts and theatre and touring and making work has a potential to do is it connects with the heart. It connects with other energies as well as the brain, and a lot of themes, a lot of stories can be universal and can connect with audiences that, you know, we're a South Asian company, you would presume that it would only be South Asian audiences that connect with the work, but that's not what we've discovered as we've toured the UK, because our themes are universal.
Can I just,
yes,
sorry,
please.
can I just contribute? Because that was one of the points that I knew was going to come up that I really tried to kind of get across in some of the examples I was showing. And I think it doesn't need to be so literal about needing to, you know, I know that I said one of the principles in which I work is to start with what's there, but starting what there is also with the people. So in some of the shows or the projects that we've brought, it's about trying to delve deeper and see if there is a story to connect, like Fly By Night. But sometimes there isn't, and sometimes it is about the people, or it's about providing job opportunities to local people, or it's about working with local performing arts colleges, or I think it's just having that extra kind of like layer that is about how do you land somewhere a bit more meaningfully in a place so that it isn't just, you know, like a one day in, out, and then, you know, you're back on the road again. So I think, and to that point, and just especially like around the jobs, I think the one thing that the strategy and that us as a sector can do is just count the pennies better and be bolder about making that case. So in Thamesmead, in this book that report I've just published, I start with, for every £1 that Peabody has invested, we've managed to bring in another £1.46 of investment into culture. And above overall other facts, that's the one that people seem to like listen to. So I think it's like, count your jobs, count the people, count, you know, how much people are spending on public transport, and that all then adds up to a stronger case. And I don't know, I hope that helps.
Thank you, because my last question, time has flown, was going to be what one piece of advice you can give to creatives, and I feel like you've done that for me.
Yes.
Thank you. So I'm going to put that question to the rest of the panel, but while you're thinking about what you can, I know that this conversation was a reflection, but it would also be helpful if we can sow a seed from your expertise in the crowd. So while you think about the what one thing that this community might do next with the policy that's formulated in the strategy and beyond, I would like to invite the panel. This is totally off the cuff and there's no obligation, so don't put your poker face on and don't respond, okay? I'm really conscious there are lots of fantastic questions on the Slido. I would love it if any of you or all of you had time to dive in and even just take one or two and just put your name to show that you've responded. That would be amazing. No obligation, I just want to put it out there. Thank you all for your questions. I want to go to Parmjit first. What one thing do you think would be the most effective for this community to do next with the strategy and the conversation we've had so far?
One thing is hard, so I'm just thinking. I think with what you brought up around tensions between touring and place-based making, and my response to saying there's room for both, I think there's something in us about advocating for time to really, when we are working with communities and with people, time to really bed in the work, time to create authentic relationships, slow making, to develop the work, so it's got strong roots from which to grow. I think time is a major factor in that, and we have to find ways we as an organisation are trying to do that with our funders at the moment, so how can we do that collectively?
Count the pennies, evidence the pennies, give time, ask for time, create. Joe?
I'd say the most important thing is for artists to keep making work that people are going to enjoy experiencing. That's the most important thing for all of us, and not to get
keep the show
not
on the road.
To get our knickers too much in a twist about second guessing what work we think we ought to be making because it's the desire of funders or places. And I think this idea that there's a tension or a dichotomy between
just
sort of
one thing, Joe, save it
place-based work or touring is wrong. We can make moments and we can bring in existing work into those moments.
And Sinead.
I would say that everything we're talking about today is about enabling the sector to make great work and continue to make great work. It's just we need to do some work behind the scenes to help you to do that, and we need to do that together. I suppose I'm always glass half full, so my big thing would be look at devolution, look at the map, look at where the new mayoral authorities are going to be, come together in networks around those places, go and talk to people, be part of that conversation, come up with some big ideas. We were talking about in Sussex, we were looking at National Theatre of Wales under John McGrath and how he talked about the nation is our stage and the amazing programme of work that he delivered there. Could we not have done something like that in Sussex, where we're animating landscapes that's absolutely powered by the outdoor arts sector, that brings up conversations about climate and that talks about community connection and really thinks about some of the big issues we have in our world, but enables great work to happen. So I think it's just having those big ideas, getting into those conversations, and I think there's real opportunity there.
It's been a really fascinating conversation. I know we've only skated across the surface in the hour. Thank you so much for your time, Adriana, John, Shanine and Parmjit. And I do hope that you'll dive into the questions. Thank you all for listening and taking part.
Yeah.